And we are also privileged to have an exceptional advisory board composed of leading experts from institutions like the World Bank, Eurofound, top European universities, and we're hoping soon to onboard more members there. And the aim is for them to guide us with their strategic insights. Now, taking a step back and looking at why the EU Active Labor Markets Observatory was proposed. For years, policymakers have faced challenges in designing labor policies that are grounded in data, effectively address labor market needs, and remain adaptable to change. So this project, EU-ALMPO, builds on prior research and lessons learned to fill those gaps. And several key factors drove to the need for our project. First, persistent mismatches between workforce skills and job market demands that make it harder for people, especially vulnerable groups, to find sustainable employment. Second, the growing role of artificial intelligence and big data in analyzing labor trends. They offer a chance to see from reactive to proactive policy making. Also, there is the need for stronger collaboration among stakeholders to ensure policies reflect real labor market needs. And on top of that, there are past pilot projects across Europe that proved the value of centralized, data-driven policy approaches. This is where our project steps in, and the aim is to build a more effective, informed, and responsive labor policy framework for the future. Going to what EU-ALMPO is, at its core, the project is about reshaping ALMPs. And the aim is for them to be more data-driven, more inclusive, and more effective across the EU. And to achieve that, we focus on 4 key areas. First one is a centralized observatory, and that is a digital hub using AI-powered insights to support policymakers. Second is policy innovation and evaluation that is enhancing through our framework the core thing we're proposing, how ALMPs should be designed and monitored. Third is skills development and matching, and we aim to bring skill gaps and foster on lifelong learning. And of course, the focus is on supporting vulnerable groups. With these pillars, we aim to make ALMPs, labor market policies overall, more adaptive and more impactful. And let's not forget who we're working for. So our project aims to support policymakers at all levels, those who shape labor market policies. We also aim to support public employment services and guidance practitioners, labor counselors, help to make them able to help job seekers navigate the market. Also, our focus is on low-skilled and vulnerable individuals, labor market actors, including employers, employees, and their representatives, and of course, the research community. By engaging all these groups, we are trying to ensure that the observatory will deliver a real impact where it matters most. And when discussing about the impact, what we mean is more effective ALMPs. We want to ensure policies are data-driven, targeted, and impactful. We aim to have impact on stronger policy making, to give decision makers real-time insights, and to anticipate labor market shifts. And of course, we are aiming at having impact on sustainable employment. We want to support upskilling, reskilling for long-term workforce adaptability. And our ambition, our vision is overall to transform how ALMPs are designed, evaluated, and implementing, bringing gaps, improving skills matching, and making labor markets much more inclusive. Overall, the EU ALMPO aims to reshape ALMP strategies across the EU by addressing existing deficiencies and improving policy development, implementation, and evaluation.
E l'unico che ho trovato è Google Traduttore.
Sorry, can you mute your microphone? Okay. So to achieve this, we will develop a comprehensive policy framework. We have already done that, and this is why we're here today. We're going to integrate AI-driven technologies to underpin and improve analysis and policy design and enhance data analytics for more effective decision making. In parallel, its advancement will be tested. So a key focus will be supporting vulnerable groups, vulnerable job seekers, ensuring better labor market integration, and of course, skills development. And this is a final slide on our work plan. So in practice, our plan turns objectives, or we hope it will turn objectives into action through three main pillars: research and analysis, information technology and artificial intelligence development, and experimentation and evaluation. So we begin with an analytical framework, Work Package 1, and we're here for that, and an in-depth study of skill matching strategies to build the evidence for smarter policies. The next phase focuses on technology. A work package is going to focus on the AI-powered repository and design tools for ALMPs. The next work package will analyze job postings and labor data, including administrative data, to forecast trends and skill gaps. And there is another IT-related work package where a tool will be developed using CV data to improve job matching and generate policy recommendations. Once the framework and the tools are ready, we're going to pilot them in 4 countries and, of course, evaluate and refine the results. And the final outcome is going to be sharing the outcome with policymakers, stakeholders across Europe, and of course, ensure quality and coordination. And we're hoping that through this structured, tech-driven approach, our EU-ALMPO will deliver evidence-based solutions to transform labor market policies and improve employment outcomes. And we aim to do that with a very concrete framework and also tools that can be immediately utilized by stakeholders. And let me stop here. Thank you all for your attention. And I'm passing the floor to Flavia to explain more about the objectives and the structure of the validation workshop. Wishing everyone a very productive workshop ahead. Many thanks. The floor is yours, Flavia.
Thank you very much, Yannis. I think I already share my screen just to, yeah, okay. So good morning, everyone. Let me also warmly welcome you all, especially Yannis said on behalf of the entire EU-ALMPO team. I say especially on behalf of the Work Package One first team, which I have the pleasure to lead. You have just heard from our project leader about the overall ambition of the EU-ALMPO project. Allow me now to zoom in on the focus of today's workshop and explain how we designed this session together with you. As said before, the purpose of the entire work package one is to develop this analytical framework that we are going to discuss today that lies at the core of the EU-ALMPO Observatory. You can see from the several tasks in Work Package 1, we have progressively moved from the definition of LMP and skill matching, especially which kind of LMPs are better for effective matching and identification of key trends and factors affecting both labor market and skills development and this match, and to finalize for the identification of key determinants. And today's session corresponds to task 1.5, which is dedicated to validating this framework together with you. I just want to stress that this framework, also from our point of view, is not just an academic exercise in isolation. It is conceived, as also Yannis pointed out, as a practical tool, one that might help, we hope that might help us to interpret the skill mismatch dynamics, to map the different logics of intervention, and to support the programming and design at different level, European, national, local level. So in other words, it will be in a way the analytical backbone of the entire project, also helping us in the further work package to review existing system and identify possible shortcomings. The objective of today's workshop are therefore very clear. We want to discuss this framework with you, with your expertise, your national and sectoral perspectives, and your critical reflection. Our aim is to ensure that what we are building is both conceptually robust and practically useful. To achieve this, the workshop has been designed to balance information and engagement. We are starting now with this plenary, the opening session that will provide a common ground of understanding. We will start just now with the keynote address. Then there will be the part of the presentation of the analytical framework and an introduction to the technological infrastructure that is going to be developed to the project and that will assist the entire activities. We will then move into some breakout session where the real in-depth discussion with you will take place. So 3 thematic groups will each look at the different dimension of the framework. We will see later in the presentation the framework is divided in 2 parts, part A and part B. Today's workshop is mainly dedicated in the breakout session to going deeper within the part A dimension, because as you will see, you will listen later on, part B is much more the bridge between this part A analytical framework and the information technology infrastructure that we are going to develop later on. So this will be strongly tackled during the breakout session. This will give us the chance, the breakout session will give us the chance to dig deeper, so to get you some more information on something that we are not covering just at the beginning, to validate the structure and to enrich it with the diversity of your experience from different contexts. Finally, we will come back together in plenary for a report back and synthesis session. This is where we will consolidate the insight from all groups and reflect collectively on what they mean for the further development of the project. So on behalf of the Work Package 1 team, let me thank again you for your time and engagement today. We are very eager to discuss this with you, to hear your insight. And we thought that to get a little bit started, just to break the ice for the morning, we would like to invite you to share via Slido just your reflection, the first keywords that you would come to your mind when you think about the challenge of skill mismatch. So to get us started and to then leave the floor to our keynote speaker. So you see in the slide that there is a QR code. So I kindly invite you all. Link in the chat. It's also included in the chat, so you can find in the PPT presentation and in chat as well. But if you can kindly, this will be quite useful for us to start already to see the diversity and richness of the perspectives in the room. So I leave you some second. Great. I can see already a lot of words, some certain theme constantly coming to your mind. I see, of course, a skills gap, but also upskilling, priorities, so stressing a certain urgency on the matter, reskilling and upskilling going together usually, and getting very interesting. Democracy as well is coming up. But I can see also in the background innovation, many words relating to particular targets. I see older workers, youth, qualified, reskilling, rapid evolution. This will all this lifelong learning is getting strongly coming up strongly. I see that there are still some participant typing, but I can really see that. Thank you very much, because I see that even with just a few words, it's clear that certain themes come constantly to the mind when we think about skills mismatch. And this first signals already highlight the relevance of today's discussion, and many of them will be tackled today, both in the plenary and in the breakout rooms. So really, really thank you. Thank you all. I think, yes, we will return to many of these issues later as we dive into the framework and as we dive especially in the breakout session. Okay, so thank you very much. We will keep this as I said, as important food for thought for the next session. And now to set the stage for our deeper discussion, it's my pleasure to introduce our keynote speaker, Kenya Parson, Dr. Kenya Parson from the World Bank and member of the ALMPO Advisory Board. So I'm very happy that Kenya accepted to be here today with us. Dr. Parson will share a reflection on tackling the skills challenge across Europe. And after the keynote, we will have a short question and answer. So, Dr. Parson, the floor is yours. So please, I can stop now.
Thank you very much, Flavia. Can you hear me well?
Yes, Kenya. Yes.
First of all, let me just thank you for the opportunity to be here today. It's a pleasure to be here and also to be part of this initiative. It's really a conversation for us, and I'm learning as much as with the documents and everything that the discussions are having. So we're going to talk about tackling the skills challenges across Europe, the role of ALMPs in evolving training environments and labor market. It's really just, as Flavia mentioned, a framing presentation because you're all very aware of all the different challenges indeed. So then the next slide, please. We're going to just give a brief context of challenges, why ALMPs, the trends, some examples from overseas, not only in Europe, the challenges across globally that we have found, as well as policies, some takeaway and home messages. So just to give you a brief overview of what we're going to discuss. So in terms of context and challenge, we know that Europe's shifting labor market is a result of various changes. So the big demographic change into the aging workforce, various trends of migration, as well as the changes on automation related to AI, which then read what are the jobs left. Various questions are emerging with the changes of automation and AI in the labor markets, right? So such as what are the jobs left? Of those jobs left, what are the skills needed? And then in terms of the types of jobs that will be available in the future, but also on the jobs left, what is the new composition of skill sets and what is the new TOR for those jobs, right? So that results in two main impacts, which is really the displacement of those that are low skills will potentially not have their jobs anymore, as well as new jobs and the transformation necessary for the job seekers or the labor market to adapt to those new challenges. So requiring necessarily higher education, adaptation skills, and as we move forward, digitalization too, and digital literacy. There is, because of those changes, persistent skills mismatches with any structural unemployment across the region. So what does that mean? It means that structural unemployment, that there's a long-term unemployment caused by these skills mismatches. So the profile of the job seekers not necessarily meet what the sectors would be demanding, but also the job seekers may not necessarily be in places where the jobs are being available. So there's an issue of skills, there's an issue of location, and there's an issue of demographic changes too. And that is a deep change in the society. So it's not, that's why it's a structural unemployment. So it's persistent, it's skills-based, it's geographical-based, and requires therefore a policy focus to make this transition viable for majority of the labor market. The next slide, please. So I think this is very brief, just what are LMPs. LMPs is a toolbox the government uses for supporting to help unemployment find work, up skills, and enter to the labor market. It's positioned within the broader labor market policy mix, which has active as well as passive labor markets policies. So the EU employment strategy, as well as the OECD job strategy, advance on this balanced policy mix, right? So, and we find different types of policy mix according to different regions within Europe or within the world. So some more focused on the active labor market, some more focused on the passive, and that mix. We have, for example, in the Nordic countries, more generous passive labor market and a strong active labor market. Policies in the continental Europe more related to strong social insurance and weaker active labor market policies, although this is transitioning, there's a change there. In the Anglo or liberal Saxon more heavily emphasizes on active with conditions associated to it, as well as a weaker passive labor market policies. By passive labor market policies, just to also remind us, is more about supporting financial support where the worker is unemployed. So unemployment benefits, minimum income guarantees, early retirement policies, as opposed to active, in which the government is taking an active role in promoting training, wage subsidies, job search assistance, and public works. The challenge necessarily is about not more about what they are, but more about how they're designed and delivered. And therefore, the role of institutions such as public employment service or the PES, job centers, case workers, the role of individuals, the training of those individuals also in delivering the policies. But in the next slide, we'll say why ALMP matters now. And matters now because of this context that we just mentioned before. So in a huge change and very fast transition, ALMPs are very important to position those that are looking for jobs and those that may find themselves in the structural unemployment into a transition for the jobs for tomorrow. So tailored reskilling for the new industries, inclusion of the youth, women, migrants, long-term unemployed, and also cushioning shocks. So climate, geopolitical shifts, war, all of those also are mechanisms, ALMPs are mechanisms to cushion those shocks. So next slide, please. In terms of trends in the training environments, we can identify these three main trends. Digital learning platforms, therefore making it more accessible. And I think you all work potentially in blended learning already. So an interface between an exchange between, a mix between online as well as in presential or in-person delivery training. And that digital learning platform is also making its way towards the institutional or the ALMPs and the public employment services. So we see more online e-learning tools for job seekers. We also see more online job search platforms in which therefore requires the digital literacy, requires therefore a conscious move in the policy programming to address the digital divide, to address places where internet is not available, and to think about how to streamline the quality across the digital learning. So digital learning platforms are great because it does improve accessible. They are accessible, but needs to think about all those aspects too, related to digital divide, internet access, and quality. Employer-led training partnerships, meaning the idea here is co-design. So there's a lot of work around on-the-job training, making sure that there's internships, that the delivery training addresses the employment needs, so that this transition is faster. And there is, in terms of LMPs, more a move towards subsidizing this type of employment-led trainings too. What is difficult in sometimes the downside of this is that small firms may not have the capacity of have that type of employment-led training. as well as the risk of just focusing the training on specific skills or specific sectors that are more trendier at that specific time. So it might not necessarily cover broader types of skills that are transferable across sectors. And the other trend is the modular competency-based approach. The idea here is microcredits for micro credits example, or progressive learning that micro-credentials, sorry, RPLs, or recognition of prior learning, boot camps, and as you have also seen on the word cloud, the idea of lifelong learning. So modular and competence-based approaches are, a trend in which you don't sit for 2 years in a TVET program or a certification or quality, but you do small modular bite-sized type of training in which you can straight away implement within the work. And those credentials are therefore building like a platform and are based more on the competence. So meaning what you can do, not necessarily what the diploma or the broader theoretical concept of it. The issue here on this trend is the idea, the difficulty necessarily in harmonizing, particularly across the EU, and as well as a potential for fragmentation in some of those micro-credentials. In terms of some examples from Europe of ALMPs, we can mention some ideas, some of these examples that I think will be interesting for us. So in Germany, for example, the model of dual apprenticeship system. So just for those who don't know, it's more or less between 2 and 3 years. It is about dual model in terms of you spend 3 or 4 days at the company, you spend 1 or 2 days in a TVET. So you have on the job training, and you also have theoretical training on the TVET. So it's a blended approach. In Germany, it covers around 300 professions. There's already evidence that shows that that has reduced the periods of non-employment, and that has increased the wages by the age of 25 of those that have been part of this type of dual apprenticeship system. It is a partnership between TVET institutions, the employers, and the government. And it requires, therefore, the employer engagement and the structural pathways are to determine the clear career path there for them. So it's very important that government, employers, and TVETs are working together within this apprenticeship system. The Baltics has an interesting example for the upskilling IT and digital skills, and it's been across the Baltics focused on a lot of inclusion as well as EU support. So for example, in Estonia, there's a focus on ICT skills and advanced ICT skills and a digital literacy for all. So training, free 2-year employer-based education, no degrees required, training provided for adults, and the e-gov, the move from an e-gov advancement, therefore requires that everybody learns about early digital skills early in their lives. So there's a move there, a very strong move towards ICT skills. In Latvia, there's a national coalition of employers and PES and digital providers, ICT in high school and TVETs. There's a focus on that too, and coding boot camps with employers, recruitment straight from those boot camps too. And in Lithuania, there's a GovTech lab in Lithuania, which focuses on startup and the public sector. So there's a partnership between startup companies, public sector, and universities, and the digital innovation. Within that partnership, they focus on digital innovation as well as entrepreneurship. So it's not only about employability and like Latvia, you have a training and straight away a focus on employment. Here is really about innovation and trying to work with the universities in that research partnership to build in new skills and innovative ideas. In Southern Europe, we have, just on that example quickly, in Spain, there are just 2 types of contracts, for example, one on training that youth they lack formal qualifications. They generally have a dual apprenticeship model, like in Germany, so 2 months to 2 years, 3 months to 2 years, and they bring back them to work formal training. Whereas there's also the other type of contract, it's more related for those that graduate in TVET institutions, and within their first 5 years or 3 years, they join therefore a work program in which they, for 6 months or 1 year. This is seen as a stepping stones towards entry to labor market. Those jobs have tutoring plans, have certificates, but there's some of the downsides that we have seen is that they have been used sometimes as in a way a cheap labor in a way, but like the government, the employers may not necessarily recruit all the apprentices after that, right? So there's a struggle sometimes in the transition of those employees that would like to continue. So whereas the company could continue bringing in more interns through this program. So in terms of global perspectives, just to give some ideas, in the Pacific Islands, which is a place where I work, there's a really a gold standard type of program in terms of migration across different countries. We have here what in New Zealand and Australia that works with the Pacific Islanders, 2 schemes that have in New Zealand more or less about 19,000 participants or workers have come to New Zealand in 2023, and about 45,000 estimated by 2025 in Australia through this scheme. So those schemes are in New Zealand, it's called RSC, or Recognized and Seasonable Employers, which is Pacific Islanders that are selected by the employers in an approved employment scheme. They come and work in the horticulture and viticulture sectors, in Australia for 7 or 11 months. And in Australia, there is a Pacific Australian Labour Mobility Scheme, which has been started since in 2000. That scheme is 2022, but it started in Pacific Labour Scheme in 2018, which then changed to Seasonable Work Program in 2012. And in 2022, we have the PALM scheme, or Pacific Australian Labour Mobility Scheme. The focus here is on low skills, so agriculture, hospitality, aged care, meat processing, and it has a short scheme, which is up to 9 months, and then long term, up to 4 years. Employers also need to be approved. And in both schemes, the idea is that it aims to address the gap in the labor shortage in the Australian New Zealand markets, in which they then bring the Pacific Islanders, which would be interested to come also and work for this. So the Australian program and the New Zealand program has been successful, and it is a gold standard in a way, because it is a way that legal migration is facilitated through different through the governments of those countries, engaging also with the approved employers in a mechanism contract in which everything is signed and is stipulated beforehand. So that has attracted a lot of attention. In terms of in Africa, there's a challenge of youth bulge and some ideas, particularly in respect to the informal sector and the gig economy. So, for example, in Kenya, there's a project called Ajura Digital Project, in which it's focused on youth. And they try to train the skills into these Ajura hubs, into which they have internet mentorship training and job platforms, as well as support services on mentorship, financial literacy, guiding contracts and taxation, and as well as training skills on digital marketing, coding, and related to aspects that they could use for the gig economy. In terms of labor-intensive industries, there is an example in Ethiopia on the Urban Productive Social Safety Net project, in which mixes Cash for Works project project for all public works schemes in which job seekers would do some infrastructure through a public works scheme, so a social assistance scheme, but they are tied with livelihoods and entrepreneurship support. So they have a they have a training on small business skills. They have a seed capital. They can try to do microfinancing also in this for those that goes to the Cash for Works program. And there is a mentorship aspect of it and self-employment opportunities. So, and in Asia, we have digital transformation training. A lot of here relates to some of the trends that we have already seen in terms of mobile first or massive digital training, massive e-learn platforms in India, for example, mobile first approach that would look at gamifying the application, or bite-size, like a Duolingo approach, right? So something that's bite-sized and specific and gamified, but also some innovation on the AI and personalized app in which, based on a test, it can tailor the content of your personalized training. So some of those lessons might be transferable for Europe. Very mindful here that each Europe being a complex continent with very different challenges too. In terms of key challenges, we have fragmented systems and weak coordination. As I mentioned before, so that's limited private sector engagement, measuring effectiveness and outcome, and financial sustainability. I want to focus just on the two last bullet points because I think the first two is very, I think we understand that and has been mentioned before. Challenge of measuring effectiveness for ALMPs is very difficult because, first of all, attribution versus correlation. So what can we say about the person having a job? It was a result of the ALMP, or would the person have a job regardless of the activation policy, right? So that is always a difficult question in any of those evaluations. The second one is the short-term versus the long-term impact. I mean, we generally can't measure long-term impact because our research projects never goes to the long-term impact, but it ends too early. But it's really important, right, those long-term impacts, because career changes and choices are necessarily related to learning opportunities that we had early on, as well as the interactions and on-the-job turn in mentorship and other activities that we have carried it out in different times of our lives. So, the challenge here is measuring that. Also, the job quality. Generally, the question is, has the person got a job? But actually what we could try to measure, which doesn't get generally measured, and it would be really interesting to measure, is the job quality in terms of wages, of benefits, of stability. If there is underemployment, meaning if the employee is working below capacity, if the work doesn't match the skills, but or if the mismatches therefore into sustainability of those jobs, or if it is just a quick activity. So job quality is something that is difficult. And one thing that I think it's really good to see that your consortium is doing is about the heterogeneity. So meaning what? Meaning the outcomes will vary by group. But measuring those outcomes in heterogeneity is difficult because sometimes you don't have that level of data to measure them. So outcomes will vary by generally the most vulnerable. So women, migrants, long-term unemployed, how are the outcomes for those? And it would be really interesting to get that measurement and not let it be washed out with the averages. And obviously one important aspect in which you are working on is having access to data and have the data on the LMISs so that these activities can be therefore measured. In terms of financial sustainability, that is more like more like a structural issue that we see in this space, because there are fiscal constraints, the different demands. I mean, we spoke before in terms of the demographic changes. So the focus, therefore, on the aging population, the focus on the pensions, the focus on the health sector, sort of displaces also the importance of these funds for ALMPs. ALMPs interventions also are expensive in a way, particularly those that are more intense, those that relate to personalized services. They're costly. They look more at specific training skills or mentorship or counseling. So those that are more related to the specific needs of an individual, they are costly, and therefore there's a balance between quantity and quality, which is influences this financial aspect and therefore challenges the financial sustainability. In terms of innovation, on the next slide, we have digital job matching platforms, social registries and data integration, and skills anticipation in AI tools. I think digital job matching platforms, you all know about that. Social registries and data integration is more maybe it's a bank lingo. I just want to mention social registry is nothing more, nothing less than a database of those that are most vulnerable. Therefore, you can calculate more, you can focus your interventions and target your interventions more to those groups. So in different countries, you may be able to already have those registries. And the integration of data, particularly in the EU, which can be very data rich, is very, it gives a lot of insights, and it supports these skill anticipation tools, because with the integration of the social security or social protection sector or social safety net, there are different words in there, meaning basically the integration of the most vulnerable population, in which you can see the spells in and out of work, in which you can see whether the person has started a tax file and started a company or not, therefore look at the labor market and see whether this potential skills anticipation of forecasting that not only through the data on the ALMIS, but also through qualitatives such as conversations with sector councils, surveys, and trace studies. But all of those different approaches would allow a more rich policy setting, right? Because the information on the social registries would allow also a specific look into potential anticipation for that group that's most vulnerable, to bringing in a more equitable approach to the policy on the ALMPs. In terms of policy imperatives, which is the next slide, we have stronger links between education, training, and labor markets. So we know that for an intervention to be successful, for a policy to be successful, these sectors, education, private sector, and the labor markets and the PES or government needs to be strongly connected. So employment involvement and co-financing is core, because the employment will know what's demands for the private sector, will know what's necessary for the market, and feeding that information back into the training providers and making sure that the training providers are agile, as well as to address those needs through different models, like I mentioned, the German model or on the micro-credentials, etc. That would involve a really, really quick or quicker turnaround into upskilling and potentially transitioning those employees that would be out of a job because of a change due to AI or due to other types of changes in the labor market. The integration with social protection and inclusion policies, as I mentioned, in terms of focusing on the most vulnerable through data sets that are already available in some of the governments, but potentially sit in a different ministry than the Ministry of Labor, and may not necessarily speak to private sector and training opportunities because they may be actually out of the training, is a really important point. So when we have, for example, mothers or single mothers who may be struggling to find a job, and they may not necessarily be within the PES system, within the labor market, because they have not necessarily looked for, active looking for a job, well, but are still in the potential exploratory phase, understanding their profile, understanding their needs, and struggle with the social protection and the social worker space within that system is really an important insight into what is the future of those moms, for example, that will be in the next 10, 15 years. How is the profile of them, and how can that group, when their kids are older, transition into jobs and transition into a future job, making sure that not only they enter the labor market, but also reducing, for example, potential social assistance benefits and making them more productive in a way, should they wish to, and should the government would like to wish to that. So in terms of role of evidence, I don't think I need to preach to the choir here. It's really monitor evaluation is key, cost effectiveness and scalability, and building evidence for policy making. And I think that's really the great insight from this work that you're all having. The way forward, we have, I just have 2 last slides. So really the idea of regional cooperation and mobility. Regional cooperation, because cooperation, for example, brings efficiency, brings a scale. It also involves recognition and qualifications, involves RPLs, involves the idea of mutual learning, potential hubs in different places. So all of that regional cooperation really brings in the labor market into dialogue to a different level, and allows more mobility and more reduction on this structural unemployment that we mentioned in the first slide. So this alignment across the qualifications, this alignment in the way of ALMP policies too, will help in the way forward. Cross-border skills recognition, adaptive ALMP systems that evolve with labor market changes. I think this is also what we have been saying before. And take-home messages, just to summarize here, if I could summarize in 3 main bullet points. ALMPs are critical levers, but they're not a panacea. As we mentioned in the beginning, really is about the how on implementing and the role of institutions, this combination, this partnership, which is the third bullet point, the partnership of state, government, TVETs, private sector, and is essential for success. So combination of innovation, inclusion, and evidence, because then that brings the feedback loop to the policy makers, to the decision makers, as well as to the TVET providers and the industries on how to adjust to the changes that are being every day more very, very fast and very drastic in a way, because we believe that, as we have seen, the changes we have seen in our lifetime, the changes are significant, and they do require a level of adaptation of the workforce necessary to embark into different types of roles or jobs or sectors. So I believe that not only ALMPs has to be adapted, but also the way in which teaching, we're talking about lifelong learning, right? But the mentality of how job seekers also and us and our future the kids, all of that skill set that's required for the jobs of the future in this constant change and very evolving, rapid change are being significantly challenged, and a significant shift. So being flexible, being adaptable, having this partnership and a dialogue and collaboration are key. This feeds up into the policies, the ALMP policies, but again, not a panacea, because the key point is really on how it's implemented. Thank you very much.
Thank you very much, Kenya. Thank you. We should have had, yeah.
I see Sandor has raised his hand.
Yeah.
Sandor.
We should have had some.
Go ahead,
please.
Sandor.
if I may come in, hi everyone. I'm Shandor. I'm senior labor economist with the World Bank and like Kenya, and I'm also a member of the advisory board. Pleasure to be connected today, and thanks for the opportunity to to address this very important project. So Kenya and I worked together on the slides. So what you have seen is I think is fairly comprehensive. But if I may underline three important points, maybe also from bringing in some additional perspectives. One is the point on integration that Kenya has mentioned. In integration, not just with social protection information in general, but an integrated approach to thinking of active labor market policies as a component of the suite of government services addressing the most vulnerable. And I do realize that the scope of this particular exercise that you're doing is not necessarily constrained to vulnerable job seekers. You know, we in the World Bank, we are specifically targeting vulnerable job seekers. But I think by the nature of the structural trends of the labor market, seeing labor demand in many key sectors in Europe, particularly seeing growing aging populations and simultaneously difficulties of recruiting, for example, healthcare workers or more generally care professionals. Eventually, every ALMP will need to go after difficult to activate groups, right? Kenya has mentioned some risk groups, and I would underline women, marginalized communities, and migrants, right? So these are also the groups that I think employers and governments will think of particular target groups for activation policies. In that sense, considering ALMPs, parallel with passive instruments such as unemployment insurance instruments, but also, as Kenya mentioned, social safety nets such as cash transfers is absolutely critical. And unfortunately, there is a global trend which we are seeing also in the World Bank, not just with our most important shareholders, but some of our less fortunate clients, where there is a global doubt in terms of the efficiency and effectiveness of cash transfers. You know, there's a lot of myths about how cash transfers deter people from job search, how they make people lazy, and so on and so forth, in spite of decades of evidence pointing to the contrary. And I think this project, while again not necessarily should be about cash transfers, I think you guys have a good opportunity to maybe dispel some of these myths and think about how actually cash transfers could be a very important and critical component of activation policies, for example, through cash plus measures, where you condition the receipt of cash transfers on participation in training or activation programs. The second point I wanted to mention is, again, just to underline Kenya's point on capacity. I have been involved at some point about, I think, 10 years ago with an OECD EU World Bank joint initiative where we were doing some fancy modeling of risk groups on the labor market at the time, fancy instruments, latent class analysis. We were using since obscure software called latent gold, and we were like identifying groups based on their underlying latent characteristics. And of course, we came up with all kinds of cool groupings of rural mothers living in Northeast Hungary with more than 2 children, and so on and so forth, presenting them proudly to our clients at the labor market institutions, who then shrugged and said, well, but we only have the 2 instruments, wage subsidies and technical vocational education and training, right? So there's only so much you can do with analytics. There's only so much you can do with data. Unfortunately, it has to be paired not just with a recognition and understanding, but also with an implementation capacity on the ALMP side. And we spoke, and you are very much aware of some instruments such as digital tools, skills forecasting, or more generally considering skills and job matching in an integrated fashion that can enable better capacity at the labor market institutions, which I think is absolutely critical. And then a final point on maybe looking outside of Europe. We have mentioned some interesting innovations from our own work in terms of digital upskilling, in terms of job matching platforms, and so on. I just really want to hammer away that point on looking into recipients of cash transfers or social assistance programs in general as potential beneficiaries of ALMPs. And if there's 2 countries you want to look into outside of Europe that can give you a lot of examples, one is Korea and the other is Turkey. They have state-of-the-art, really highly developed, very efficient digital platforms that work specifically to this objective, to make sure that people with overlapping challenges, with multiple difficulties that tend to receive cash transfers in those countries, are prioritized for job search assistance, for mentoring, for job matching, and so on. Again, most of it is evident, and in the administrative data environment in Europe, it should be quite simple to implement, but it is unfortunately not the case for a variety of reasons, partly because of lack of institutional coordination, but mostly because of lack of political will. I think that's all that I wanted to kind of add to this conversation, and I'll be around for another half an hour. I'm actually driving in Southwest Hungary to pick up my mom from a hospital, but I'll be happy to continue contributing to the conversation as needed. Thank you so much for your attention.
Thanks a million, Sandor. Flavia?
Yeah, thanks a million, Sandor. And of course, thank you, Kenya, for your very interesting speech and very interesting elements that we were really happy that we're already tackling many of the issues that we will discuss later on. We should have had some very, very quick question and answer if someone of you wants maybe some clarification. Otherwise, we can start with the framework and then see later of that. I don't know if there is no one raising the hand, so maybe I can start. Simo, can you please share the screen? Okay. So
just to say, if we have any questions or comments or something, please post them in the chat and we will respond to you online.
Yeah. Okay, maybe during the presentation. Okay, great. So yes, please move ahead. So we said already what is the framework we are going to present, what is their proposal. Now we will go a little bit deeper in its structure. The framework architecture, as I was saying before, is articulated into two main components, part A and part B. Here in the plenary, we will present both, but then, as I said before, in the breakout session, we will concentrate it on part A. So please, as you can see, we have this big picture, but in which we wanted to show, to give you immediately a framework overview of our part A, how we thought and how we structured. So as we say, the part A established the conceptual foundation of this analytical framework, clarifying the main dimension through which policy can, in particular LMPs, can address a skill mismatch. If you can see in the arrow in the middle, it's structured into 4 core components. So starting from the problem, as we've seen also with the Kenya presentation, labor market friction and skill mismatch, and how they are created. Then the central part, starting with policy aim and with the idea of all the different policies that may address a skill mismatch, is understanding the scope of LMPs and other policy in addressing skill mismatch. Then we have the other part of the target group of LMPs for skill mismatch that all the arrow lead to the definition of the key determinants for effectiveness. Along these pillars, you can see above and below, we included in the framework 2 transversal dimensions, key trends of skill mismatch. Some of them also were mentioned before, and we will explore later on, and factors influencing the effectiveness. So you see, we also, everything is moved to create the key determinants for key effectiveness. These cross-cutting elements capture both of them, trends and factors, whether contextual and structural conditions that shape how policies are designed, implemented, and, as we said, ultimately how effective they are. just to give you a better understanding, each section of part A follows a tripartite structure. So in the model, when we will finalize and we will be able to send to you after this validation workshop, will be structured following this structure. So we have first a context and rationale part that explain the reason and the logic behind the inclusion of each part of the model within the framework. Then we have a part on key elements that present the substantive content and main aspect to be considered for each of the main pillar. And then the very last part is on implication. So what does it mean? This part will draw out the consequence for policy analysis, design, and evaluation. So having this part or this pillar within the framework, which are the implication for policy analysis, design, and evaluation. This approach, in a way, ensures that part A of the framework not only identify and describe the relevant components, but also explain their significance and interconnectedness among all the parts. And in doing so, it provides a clear and systematic foundation for understanding how LMPs, among other policy, can be mobilized to reduce the skill mismatch, therefore laying the groundwork for the subsequent parts of the framework. Part B, which will be later presented by my colleague Silvia Castellazzi, represented both a challenge for us and I have to be honest with you, but also an innovative dimension of this project as it seeks to connect a solid analytical framework with the practical functioning of a generative AI tool. And as I said, is developed through service design methodology and in a way introduce interaction and touch point to show how policymakers may engage with the tool during the policy cycle. But as I said, this will be, I will pass then the floor after my presentation to my colleague. So just going back on part A, move on please. As I said, part A is organized around several building blocks, starting with the first one, that is in a way the problem. So starting from the problem, the policy problem that we want to address. The first block is labor market friction and skill mismatch. The rationale of this first block is related to the importance of placing skill mismatch within the broader domain of labor market friction. Which is essential, we thought it was essential for a meaningful analytical framework on this matter. We know that the mismatch rarely appears in isolation, so recognizes this interconnection prevents the analysis from being reduced to a narrow deficit model centered just on individuals or firms, and instead situated the mismatch within the overall structural and systemic dynamics of the labor market. Another crucial aspect of skill mismatch is complexity. Skill mismatch manifests itself at multiple levels, from the micro interaction between workers and vacancy to macro level imbalances in aggregate supply and demand. And another crucial element, it evolves over time. That's why we always pose these arrows just to make understand that this is a process that we want to cover. So looking at mismatch through the lens of this multiple dimension and its interrelation within broader labor market friction has significant consequences for both analysis and policy design. Should encourage policymaker and researcher to examine not only the visible manifestation of mismatch, but also the underlying mechanism that sustain it, distinguishing between different forms such as vertical, horizontal. We will see then later on in one of the parallel rooms, as well as more systemic barriers. So the framework in this sense provides a conceptual basis for assessing how LMPs interact with these dynamics. Recognizing the complexity and multidimensionality of mismatch also highlights the importance of carefully considering the scope and objectives of policy intervention. So if we can move to the next slide, please. That is exactly the second block that is underlining is related to understanding the scope of LMPs in addressing skill mismatch. So we talk also before in our understanding that labor market policy are of course among one of the main instruments deployed to address the challenge of skill match. But like a mismatch itself, as we said, they also act labor market policy represent a broad and multifaceted concept encompassing a wide range of intervention. So given this variety, defining the scope, you see policy aims, defining the scope of any policy, and in particular of LMPs, is essential in order to understand how it can interact with skill mismatch. It is equally important to remember that mismatch is not addressed solely through LMPs, so other policy measures also kind of was underlining this aspect, also not formally part of the LMP category, can also exert a strong influence on mismatch dynamics. The scope of LMPs must therefore be seen on not only in relation to placement service or unemployment reduction, but also as a lever for skill development, resilience, long-term employability in a context of structural change. For this reason, you see there are three circles. The framework proposes a distinction between LMPs that directly target skills development and matching, LP not directly addressing skill mismatch, but they can exert in some certain way some influence, and policy and intervention which are not LMPs but handle skill mismatch. So you see that there is these three circles in the middle of the arrow, and they are all interconnected to each other. So acknowledging this complexity allows us to situate LMPs within the wider ecosystem of labor market and social policy, and to assess later on the real capacity to address the skill mismatch challenges that we have seen as so much nuance and so much characteristic. The next step is to refine the focus further by determining the categories of beneficiaries that intervention should target. Please, thereby linking the scope of action within the specific population in need of support. This is tackled by the third block of the framework, related to the identification of the target groups. Also, in this case, we thought that an essential dimension in the design and implementation lies in identifying the specific needs of beneficiaries and ensuring that policy effectively targets them. LMPs can target broad categories. We will see also later on in one of the breakout room, such as the unemployed, the employed at risk of job loss, or even the inactive. On this, we included this part also in the framework, also after a long discussion on this. But within each of these, between the employed, and the inactive, within this, they often focus on specific groups that need to be recognized and need to be fully understood and connected to the policy aims and the specificity of the policy interventions that we see in the previous block. Young people, women, migrants, older workers, the low-skilled, or people even with disability, or any other groups that might need in support. The way targets are defined, of course, is never neutral. The framework recognizes essential elements. It reflects policy priorities, institutional tradition, broader social concern. So targeting decisions are really crucial because they have strategic importance, as they may shape who benefits, how effectiveness can be assessed, and the extent to which intervention might contribute to both efficiency but also equity. They also influence how far policy can be compared across countries and sectors. So in terms of implication are quite crucial. The identification of target groups thus we thought refines the perimeter of action by specifying for whom policies are designed both at the macro and micro level. At the macro level, this might ensure the systemic challenges such as unemployment, underemployment, inactivity are addressed through preventive or corrective measure. And at the micro level, it highlights the necessity of tailoring intervention to the concrete barriers experienced by a specific group. For example, by aligning retraining schemes with the need of low-skilled workers, or by integrating languages and recognition services for migrant and refugees. Defining clear target population also within our framework provides an essential reference for monitoring and evaluation, as it allows researchers and policymakers to assess not only whether intervention reduce skill mismatch in aggregate, but also whether they succeed in enhancing employability, resilience, and inclusion among those who face the highest risk. Moreover, bringing together macro and micro perspective, it facilitates a balanced policy mix, one that is capable of addressing systematic imbalance in the labor market, while also, attending to the differentiated vulnerabilities of individuals and groups. In this sense, targeting function as both as analytical and a strategic tool, and for policy analysis clarifies the population that should be included in the assessment of mismatch and its remedies. From the policy design point of view, it also offers guidance on how to align intervention with diverse needs and risk, while avoiding at the same time gaps or blind spots in coverage. And I would say ultimately, by situating targeting alongside scoped objectives that we see in the previous block, the framework encourages a comprehensive approach, one that recognizes the multidimensional nature of skill mismatch that we saw in the first block, and support the development of LMPs and other policies that are both effective and equitable. As we said before, please, the framework also integrates, I said, two transversal dimensions. The first are the trends that shape mismatch and LMPs. Neither policy nor mismatches exist in a vacuum. They are deeply embedded in wider economic and social transformation, so including this transversal elements, dimension for us was crucial. On the demand side, we saw digitalization, technological change, the green transition, restructuring, and constantly reshaping skills requirement. On the supply side, at the same time, demographic aging, migration flow, labor force participation patterns, and persistent issues in literacy and numeracy are equally influential. So, as you can see from the screen on the trends, there is still an arrow that for the framework represent evolution in time, and both trends from the demand and supply side at the same moment. It's a little bit small, but I think you can see. This force make a mismatch a moving target, and policy must therefore be adaptive and forward-looking, anticipating also in a way structural shift rather than simply reacting to them. Please. The second transversal dimension relate to the factors in LMP design and implementation. At the same time as the trends, also this is an evolution, also this is an area that influence all the pillars that are in the middle of the framework. And these are also and even crucial. We know that from evidence, from the literature, that even measures, some policy intervention may appear similar. The result can vary widely depending on especially on the institutional and governance context. So the framework highlights the crucial importance of the broader institutional ecosystem, the governance of skill system, the governance of LMP themselves, and the capacity for innovation and adaptation that should be crucially considered when designing LPs for skill mismatch. This condition explains why apparently similar programs can achieve very different outcomes. They remind us that success depends not only on the measure itself, but also on the way they are resourced, coordinated, and supported by institutional learning. We will see also all these aspects that we included in the all the factors that we included for crucial is crucial dimension within the framework, and we will debate also this in one of the parallel breakout sessions. Finally, the framework looks at the determinants of effectiveness. As you see, everything in the arrows that we described till now and that we designed for the framework directly and in the key determinants for effectiveness that should guide in our ambition policy designer to take note and understand how they can better design policy. Building on, so everything that we included within the determinants build on the preceding section of the framework. The framework recognizes that effectiveness ultimately rests on a complex set of interdependent dimensions which focus on program design and implementation, on the characteristic of the target groups, on the use evaluation and policy feedback, and on the influence of broader institutional and contextual conditions. So referring again to all the previous block and the previous elements that we included in the framework. For each of these 4 broad macro areas, but this will also be better explored in one of the background sessions, key determinants are identified. So this calls for moving beyond, again, a narrow focus on program design in isolation, but instead approaching effectiveness as the outcome of systemic interaction. So adopting, in our view, for our framework, adopting this systemic perspective would allow for a more comprehensive understanding of what drives success or failures and helps to avoid partial or fragmented interpretation. I will stop here. As I said, in the background rooms, all these elements of these pillars, which will be later on briefly still analyzed. I will leave the floor to my colleague Silvia Castellazzi, who will take us into framework part B. Silvia,
thank you.
I leave you the floor.
Thank you, Flavia, and hello to everyone also from my side. We will now move in the next couple of minutes to share with you the second part of the framework, which might be able to also answer some of the questions that we saw in the chat concerning to the objective also of the framework. And here I come to what Flavia was mentioning in the beginning, considering some of the challenges that this framework also proposed to us from a research perspective. The objective of the framework is to inform all the next steps of our research, of our program, and that's why, in particular, considering the AI part that Janice will explain to us in a second, we made an effort to understand how these different parts are related. The objective then of the framework is to be relevant for the AI infrastructure that will help policymakers at different governance level to address these challenges. This is also why, and I pick up on one of the questions in the chat. For the time being, there was not a limitation in terms of focuses for the skills mismatch. We consider different categories, different types, knowing that at ground level, at local level, different contexts and different situations might arise and might need to be addressed from a policy perspective. I will briefly guide you in the effort that we did to move from the analytical framework to the way in which it can be used and leveraged with the wizard. Wizard is the name that for the time being we have given to one of the different instruments that is powered by AI within this project, and will guide you through the process that we have followed to achieve some first potential use case, queries, and user journeys that the users of the wizard could use. In terms of conceptual challenge, maybe one first focus on these, and you find it on the first bullet point of this chart. This is a highly interdisciplinary research program. So we are working in particular in this first phase between among different types of disciplines: social scientists, labor economists, educational scientists, information engineers. So one of the questions that we asked ourselves was how to operationalize to a certain extent, how to transfer the power of the framework, of the analytical framework, which, as you saw, is a construction of different variables and different messages into something that can be used by policymakers in their specific context. So the framework doesn't deliver an answer, let's say, to the dynamics that we have discussed, but delivers a way through which we can consider these different elements and how to balance the rigor of the analytical framework with the user friendliness, we could say, of the AI tool was one of the key challenges that we tried to address in this second part of our framework. We did it trying to have a methodology and a disciplinary approach guiding us that Flavia mentioned. We referred to some instruments from service design, which leverage what is called as literature stream public service dominant logic. I'd like to spend a second on this. It's a stream related to the nature of services, the nature of public services, that helps us to understand that the tool we are developing, also the framework and the AI tool, will express their value only when the users, the stakeholders, the policymakers will interact with such instruments and will be able to create some knowledge that is relevant for their policy design, for their policy implementations. We discussed also with Kenya in the beginning for their specific contexts. To do so, we need to focus not only on the analytical part, not only on the technology, but also on the interaction between these elements and the users that can refer to it. For us, users in this first part of the program, of the project, are, as I said, policymakers and stakeholders of different types. So first of all, using these type of approaches, we tried to conceptualize the technology and the wizard as part of a broader system in which the key perspective to be taken is the one of the beneficiaries first and of the users of the tool, and only then of the technology and of the analytical framework that we showed, to make sure that what we are developing will also be relevant and useful and robust, we said in the beginning, for the users. So let me guide you through this system, to this depiction of the different interdependencies and the model that we have created out of it. We know the targets of all this effort are the individuals, citizens, enterprises who might be involved in active labor market policies, targeting and reducing their skills mismatch and therefore increasing also their labor market employability and opportunities. These final beneficiaries usually interact through a series of services and channels with the policymakers and the stakeholders at different governance levels. On this one side, our policymakers and stakeholders will interact with this black box, which we have called the AI-ALMPO wizard, and on which in a second Janice will give us more details, allowing us to go more into the black box. For the time being, it's enough and relevant for us to focus on the fact that there are some parts of this AI tool which will be visible to the user. Everything you can imagine, as with any type of AI tool that you're using or any other type of digital app or service that you're using. There are some parts that the user sees, the website, the prompts, the chatbot. These are called technically touch points. So there are different TPs that the team of Janice has been building and has been construing over the past couple of months to create what is usually called the UX or the UI, so the user experience or user interface. Behind this, so only at the end of this perspective, we have what we have been talking about so far. So on the one side, in this model, which is called survival model in literature, we have the technological infrastructure as one specific part in the LLM, in the repository, which has been one of the key part of our discussions so far and will also be in the next months, and the knowledge infrastructure, which conceptually is covered by what Flavia has been showing us so far, and the different documents, the framework, the research results that we will produce, but also the evidences, the data that we will be able to feed into the AI system. In the arrows, I'll spend 1 second on the arrows. In the arrows, in particular, between the policymaker and the wizard, is where we are really able to create relevance and meaningfulness with the project and with the tool. So allowing the users to interact in a rich way, in a competent way, in a up-to-date way with everything that is going on to a certain extent behind the scenes in what you see here as the backend. Based on this, and I now move to the second part of this few slides that we have on part 2. We have developed, leveraging also the knowledge and the different perspectives within the consortium. We have started a process for what is called in design thinking empathizing. We didn't follow, we followed the macro steps of an established design thinking process to get some first inspiration in this preliminary phase of the development of the wizard and of the tools. To empathize, which means to try and understand how these tools and this research can be used on a day-to-day basis by the stakeholders and the people who are also here with us today and will benefit from these results going forward. We went through different steps. Some of you might be familiar with this type of approaches, which bring us first to identify possible archetypes of users, develop some identity cards, so we could say technically some personas to get to know the stakeholders better, and based on this do a first selection, a first list of potential use cases. Use cases are the reasons why we might use the ALMPO wizard and GPT as stakeholders. So we tried to focus on key relevant needs and questions that a stakeholder might have at ground level or at different governance levels to be addressed through the tool. This was particularly relevant to go more and more in detail. So starting from stakeholders, moving to their responsibilities and possible needs, going to use cases, developing some examples of queries, of prompts for the tool, so that we get also in this first phase a feeling for what could actually somebody in real life use the tool for. Based on this, we then developed some exemplary user journeys, which should help us to have an idea of how the tool is used and then derive some implications for the framework, but also for the wizard, which then Janice in the next couple of minutes will focus on. So in the next couple of minutes, we'd like to give you an example of the tools that we used. So I will not focus on the specific content, which is addressed in the report and in the next phases of the program. But to give you an idea, we identified first a set of different stakeholder and governance levels, which could be relevant at the EU level as a first way to narrow down the challenge of identifying possible usages. For each of these in the consortium, we developed personas, and we tried to reflect on what are the responsibilities at different types of governance levels when it comes to policy design, skills mismatch address, and the different topics that Flavia has discussed, but also Kenya and Janice in the beginning they have shared with us. Stakeholders, personas, from this we moved, and here I will stay one second longer to identify possible cases to be leveraged through the AI. which means the AI has some input on the type of objective, the type of effect, the type of knowledge that we want to create. It's not left random, of course. We identified the possible need and value of at policymaking level to gather inspirations for specific practices, gather details on specific interventions. Here, the work on the key determinants is particularly crucial and valuable. The tool could work on specific variables and give us and give the policymakers input for further analysis, and so forth and so on. This was useful to have a first skeleton, a first scheme of what could be helpful going forward, and to highlight also, which is important to us, how the competence and the contribution of the policymaker and of the stakeholder in using the tool will be. So the tool will, of course, not work by itself. It will only work as good as we have it work in the real life situations that it will be applied in the next couple of months and years. I close in a second. For you to have an idea, we developed some possible user journeys, which were quite interesting because it helps to focus on the fact that the tool will not be used only in a digital environment, but the type of questions that might come from policymakers will require and should require several steps, interactions also with other people, with other tools. So we try to identify the sequence, the possible sequence of interactions and usages of the tool. And by doing so, in the end, we achieved, and I will close on this, we achieved the second part of the framework, which reminds us of the fact, and you find it here on the left part of the chart, that the AI will be mapped and will support, thanks to the infrastructure that I showed earlier, both on the technical side and on the knowledge side, what happens in the real life of the policymakers, which is going through a policy design, implementation, monitoring, and evaluation cycle. And these will also be then in detail the type of questions that can be addressed, and also as an important implication for us, the different documents, databases, evidences that we might build up in the next couple of months and years to feed into the infrastructure and make sure that the tool will be relevant and useful for those who use it. I will stop here. If there are other questions, I will hand over to Flavia if there is a closing comment from your side, and then to Giannis. If there are other questions, and it has also been the case, you can put them also in the chart, and then we'll make sure to pick up of them also in the breakout rooms. I hope I have anyway quite addressed what was in the chat. And Flavia, if there is any closing comment from your side, and then Giannis will hand over to you to help us really understand what is behind what goes on behind the scenes. So, thank you.
Thank you, Silvia. No, I'm fine, absolutely. So I think we can leave the floor to Giannis that move forward from what you have presented, allowing us to better understand the technological infrastructure that we will build up within the project. So please, Giannis, go ahead.
Many thanks, Flavia. I realize how important the coffee break is for everyone, so I'm gonna try to walk through this quite fast. And now that you've heard about the overall objectives and ambition of our project in terms of the framework, I would like to set the focus on the technological backbone that we hope it will make these ambitions possible. So this part of the presentation will walk you through the technological infrastructure of the project, the digital tools, AI components, and data systems that will form the observatory. In short, this is the part where our analytical framework is transformed into a functioning platform. And this platform will bridge between research and practical policy making. So one of the biggest challenges we're trying to face in labor market policy is that evidence and operational data are fragmented. Information is scattered across various sources, including PDFs, portals, spreadsheets, and many more, make it challenging for policymakers and analysts to utilize it effectively. So our goal in the project is to change that, to collect, to normalize, understand, and recommend, and ultimately visualize ALMP knowledge with full incorporation of monitoring and evaluation. So this involves transitioning from raw dispersed data to actionable insights. And concretely, we're working towards several outcomes. A document repository with assisted annotation, a central database of documents, an ALMP wizard with an interactive design interface to be used by our various stakeholders, labor market analysis tools that integrate multiple sources, analytics and tailored recommendations, and one tool focused on potential job seekers, a CV-aware policy design prototype. So on this slide, you will see the core technological framework of our project. And I want to stress that here we're focusing only on the components that are currently being developed. Some elements you may have heard about in earlier discussions, such as CV-aware, policy design, prototype, etc., belong to later stages of the project. They're not covered here, but specifically this technology framework consists of the repository and the annotator. This is where documents, policy documents, any kind of ALMP document are uploaded. They're auto-tagged with very careful intervention of facilitators in this process. We have a question answering tools which lets users query policies and get cited answers. We have a wizard recommender which helps select target groups, constraints, provide ranked policy templates, facility for policy design, etc. We're going to have dashboards for drilling into coverage and outcomes, and all this infrastructure is going to be safeguarded by an evaluation modules, which allows comparisons among various releases, etc. So these tools are going to be the backbone of our IT infrastructure, and the aim is to transfer scattered data into actionable intelligence for policy design. And here is the pipeline, how information flows within the system. We begin by gathering data sources, including reports, job portals, administrative data sets, etc. Next, the system organizes and tags, characterizes the data in a granular level, making it structured and easy to access. From there, we summarize the key points, extract the most relevant information, and then the system is able to identify patterns, gaps, highlight trends, and missing elements. And based on this, it can suggest actions, pathways, propose concrete policy steps, and strategies. Important to note is that all outputs undergo human review, where experts validate and refine the system's suggestions. What we're trying here is to achieve evidence-based policy making while keeping the human factor within the loop for evaluation and trustworthiness. Now, in terms of our sources, first we have ALMP documents, research papers, administrative records, policy and evaluation reports in various formats. We integrate job postings and administrative data. We are including statistical data set to support policy design at a country level. And finally, we collect all these with existing taxonomies in the EU, like ESCO, ISCO, NACE, etc. And we're also using an agnostic approach so the system can be customized to other taxonomies or settings. We're trying to ensure that this framework and tools are grounded in both real-time labor market data and long-term policy evidence. Apologies for this part. It seems quite technical, but it's important for me to show you how the pieces fit together. First, we have an ingestion layer. Data are crawled, connected, scheduled, deduplicated, converted into data that can be structured at a next level. There, we extract metadata, we map taxonomies, we identify entities, attributes, etc. And the knowledge layer is where the documents, our material, lives. So it's a version and queryable repository combined with a document annotator to provide more information into the existing one. We have an intelligent layer that powers smart functions like retrieving related documents, etc. There we have a recommender, and we have all our knowledge based, and this is available to the experience layer where we have the dashboards, the ALMP wizard mentioned by our colleagues, and on top of that and throughout the process, we have the quality assurance layer where we have human at the center of all this. So while this looks really technical, the takeaway is quite simple. Data flows upwards from raw sources into structured and enriched data and ends up into tools and dashboards that we hope they're going to use user-friendly and policy-relevant interfaces with built-in safeguards. And let me stop here with the technical discussion. Here we have some initial prototypes I can show to you. For example, this is the login page of the system. Let me stress here that there are various roles in there. You see ALMP designers, policy stakeholders, analysts, researchers, curators of documents, etc. So in reality, the whole system has several subsystems to cover several functions. The whole platform is not just a one-size-fits-all tools. It adapts to the needs of each group that is going to use the system. Here, you see an initial version of the repository. You see collection of documents and use of AI assistance to highlight the most important passages. Think of this as a shared library where long policy reports and evaluations are transformed into accessible and searchable knowledge through labels within the documents and building quality checks. In practice, this means analysts, researchers, policymakers, curators can collaborate more effectively and can access evidence that is well structured as well as reliable. Now, in the first step, how do we convert unstructured knowledge into structured knowledge? Here we have a tool called Document Annotator. This tool is going to be released within the next 2 months. On the left, you see the guide where key sections and AI suggested tags are highlighted because we're trying to augment information within existing document. The central page here shows the full document divided into chunks of information, and there you can tag this information based on existing taxonomies you already have or AI created taxonomies. What we're trying to do is to label various parts of a report and tag them based on different taxonomies. And we do that both manually, if someone likes, or we can do this through AI. And here you will see the curator's role. When a passage is selected, you will see this is a passage from here, several factors, etc. The annotator, the curator of the documents, can enrich this information with additional metadata. For example, suggest a title, a summary, or combine roles with it. And you can also see suggestions from AI as well as a percentage of the relevance of these suggestions. And finally, within the same tool, we're building support for various taxonomies for annotating documents, tagging them, providing them labels, where curators, as already said, can have their own taxonomies, or they can have AI-supported taxonomies, because as Flavius already mentioned, we're going to have reports, research papers, evaluations of projects. Each of these document categories would need different taxonomies for effective tagging and effective mechanisms to search the information. Once we have all these in place, then we have the wizard already mentioned. This is where the whole story begins for the user. So the wizard begins by asking the policymaker to define their design task, for example, developing an ALMP in Greece on youth unemployment. On the left here, you can see some of the interactive features. The mind map allows users to visually explore how different sources and policy elements connect, while Canvas is here, provides a structured space to start shaping ideas into policy design. And we're hoping we're going to provide easy-to-use tools for policymakers to go beyond just reading document. We want to let them see the policy space, organize the evidence, and begin framing their intervention in a guided and visual way. Here, you can see the wizard in action. In this example, the user asks for information about an irrelevant topic like machine learning, and the wizard responds by pointing to relevant documents in the repository, offering either a summary of key concepts or answer to specific questions, and also progresses the interaction with the policymaker or the final user. And this is the mind map feature where once the policymaker has defined their tasks and started interacting with the sources, the system can automatically generate a visual map of the main concepts, the challenges, the connection. In this example, you will see for developing policies on digitization, the map highlights areas such as technological change, governance, effectiveness, risk management, all the things that the policymaker should keep in mind. And the final step of the tool is the canvas, where after all the interaction, I can start creating my own policy. I can use existing templates for policy design. I can construct the final document based on the evidence I found in the previous phases, and I can also edit online parts of all this. We aim that the result is a transparent, evidence-based draft that can be exported, shared, and further refined. So let me just stop here. I'm not gonna spend more of your time. This is just an example of day-to-day operations with the tool. And for a policy analyst or a designer, the system enables the design of policies or the quick comparison of, for example, subsidies across years and regions, drawing directly from structured evidence. A program manager can prepare a briefing with sources and key figures on them, supported by automated summaries and visualizations. And a job counselor, can explore training options tailored to a beneficiary's profiles. So thinking of this at a high level, on the left, we have in practice the policy design and the update process and how several tasks evolve from identifying market trends to generating options, select the preferred approach, and drafting an outline. Here, this is a visual of the skill gaps to action plan pathway, where it highlights how unknown gaps can be translated into concrete, personalized action steps. And here we have another visual where the analysis funnel demonstrates the mechanics. Documents are retrieved, tagged, clarifying questions asked, and answers traced back to their sources. I had a couple of more slides on transparency, how we collect data, etc., and most importantly, how we assure security, privacy, and compliance. But let me stop here to see if there are any questions. If not, I know you're all very tired by now. Thank you for your attentions. I realized that parts of this presentation were technical, but please keep in mind that our aim is to make these tools practical and accessible for all users, and we welcome your feedback as we move forward. Keep in mind that all these tools are going to be open source, and whoever wants can have access to them, as well as early access in beta versions of the tools, because the plan is to release them by the first half of next year. But if you want to participate, we would be more than happy to give you access earlier. And let me stop here to see if there are any questions. Otherwise, Flavia, you can drive us to the next part.
Yeah, no, I think we all deserve a short break. I'm sorry, we try to be compress. There are a lot of issues. We should have done this workshop for an entire day, but we thought that it would have been too much. So we try to compress everything, but yes, in the breakout session we can have some talks and maybe explore some better insights. Thank you, Shimus. I saw already your question. You are in the breakout room with me, and this is one of the issues. Measurement for is really crucial for sure. So I don't know if there is nothing urgent. I would leave at least a 10 minutes break just for, I don't know, having a short coffee or a short break and then reconvene here. Maybe we can save some time. We drop methodology of breakout session. We just send you to the breakout room. Of course, we try to do here centrally just to avoid time dispersion, and we try to follow in some criteria of geographical representation and typology of people. You are representing different typology of stakeholders and researchers, so this was done. Of course, if someone think that would make some changes, you can always say in the chat. So just 10 minutes and then yes, we can come back and then immediately send to the breakout session. Thank you.
Thank
So
you.
back in 10 minutes then.
Yeah, I'm sorry. I'm
Okay.
really sorry,
Okay.
but yeah,
Okay.
it should have been 20, but otherwise.
A short coffee.
Okay. Hi, everybody. We are about to start again. In a few moments, you will be directed to the breakout rooms.
Thank you.
Sorry, I invite the RS members to join directly the rooms. You can join by yourselves.
One. Several people have been just active here.
I also invite those who are still in this room, if they can tell me that if they can access the room, they are connected by themselves, because the system couldn't assign them a room.
Sorry, I don't
You-
find any button to join a room, or I don't know if this is already a room. Sorry.
No, I'm sorry, this is not a room, and the system couldn't be able to assign you a room, to assign you a room.
Okay.
I don't know why, but I think you're not using Teams, maybe.
I'm using Teams, but not from my institutional account.
Okay.
Maybe that's a problem.
Okay, I see if I can fix this problem. I'm
Okay.
in you from in a moment.
Thanks.
And sorry, Mr. Fernandez, I can see I cannot do anything because I have not access to your position. I suggest you to quit and then to enter again in the call. Maybe something changes.
Okay, I'll do it. Thanks.
Okay, thanks a lot. I'm sorry, Athena, and also for you and Stamatis, I couldn't be able to assign you to any room. Please see if you can do it by yourself, or maybe you can do the same as Mr. Fernandez, quit and enter again. Maybe you can see if something changes, but I cannot assign you to any room.
Okay.
Sorry, I'm seeing now a message saying that some people here has like a premium version of Teams, and I don't. So maybe that's a problem.
Hello, I'm really sorry, but nothing changed. So I don't know how to do. Maybe you can use another account. I don't know.
No. Well, I'm gonna try with another one. Yes, I mean,
There's some restriction that I cannot overpass.
Okay, I'll try with all the university accounts. Okay, thanks.
Sorry. Athena, the same for you. I cannot do anything. I let you see what I see. You see, I cannot do anything.
Mm-hmm. So what do you reckon? Or take a rest?
Yes, we are recording it. Yes, we are recording also the breakout rooms, so we will not lose anything.
Okay. All right.
Okay.
Bye-bye.
Okay. Bye. See you later.
What time to come back?
I'll ask and I'll tell you.
Okay.
Τι έγινε?
Δεν μπορεί να μας βάλει σε room, δεν ξέρει γιατί, δεν μπορεί,
καλά.
δεν αυτό.
Δεν
Άντε, για φεύγουμε. Και άρα να πάρουμε την Τζόρτζια να το κάνουμε τώρα.
Καλά, κάτσε μια στιγμή αφού λέει ότι τέτοιο.
Ούτε κάτσε με πέντε. Έλα, Τσέλσι. Καλά είναι. Και μας είπαν ότι δεν μπορούν να κάνουν κάτι. Φαίνεται δεν... Τι να σου πω. Θα τα recorded λέει και θα δούμε. Όχι, σε πέταξε δεν παίρνεις γιατί δεν μας έχουν κάνει annotated σε rooms. Κατάλαβες. Οπότε επανερχόμαστε σε μία ώρα όταν θα έχει τελειώσει αυτό πότε θα είναι που να κάνουν το wrap-up. Εντάξει.
We are back here at 12:30. We will back here. Okay.
Ταμ, βγαίνουμε και να την πάρουμε να το κάνουμε τώρα.
Προσπαθεί νομίζω η τέτοια, κάτι είπε τώρα η Έλληνα.
Είπε
Hi, Mr. Fernandez. Now is it okay? I assigned to stream 2.
The LMP. Then we saw the other vehicles that it took LMP not directly, but they might have an element of something that scientists, including that ones, but also the sheltered and support national team to include considering the attention that the frame of the target, including effort to include also active but more private also the strength and direction. At the same time, recognizes that are connected with other policies of not handling the effect of national labor reforms are crucial for speed and casting at least other elements are also connected. Also, just to give you a broader understanding of what we include, we will for sure stated this workshop will help us to refine some elements or just or to finalize the model. Just to ensure and we will tackle hear from about this very last for just is about the current in the plenary, but we said in the plenary that unemployed. As they said, also these three five that are the major if this part of inactive not because of state intervention on and while special attention identifying a different target group and the element and different kind of skill mismatch concept and dimension that we work for and to a so I think I bring to finally listen to you, so I will stop here. That will be, as I say, many because now the ALMPO is already used and is being very but so we say we can use these two main questions so that we either use start from point that you think is relevant of elements that trying this room. But the idea is that it help us to tell us if part with a clear comprehensive for understanding of the matches and if this classification, so part of action button. Actually, I stopped really. I spoke too much today, and I leave. That and answer and carry that is any answer. Stop carry first. Very much, Kyle. Yes. So you mean more granularity in level? Yes. Idea of there also makes us underlining the idea that there is so that it's going on continually evolving, changing. In terms. And I am sure, yes. Pick on the challenges that are really crucial and that yeah, thank you. Happy to see you. Girlfriend. Thank you. absolutely agree. And maybe, yeah, we try to most of them just to to the concept of complexity and multidimensionality, but I completely agree that we can acknowledge the fact that some of those are much more group and maybe down, or at least much on the Claudio Vitali from nice to see you all. We are in a room of old friends. Claudio for so many questions and ask for better improve and better refine some elements. Sure, many of the issues that you have tackled, we also had in mind and we tried and but we can of course better finalize. We are taking notes and maybe zeros especially because we help them to go back to the plenary and we can share taking just to acting what thing. Some of the aspects you tackled are indeed there, but of course can be further defined. Some aspect of practical dimension is tackled, especially with the part of the factors. But for sure, I'm the first. I'm greater, and I follow the approach of realistic dimension. So for textual dimension is crucial, absolutely. And also this aspect of outreach, I think it's important. As I said before, we added it in discussion, it including, health, and then we say, yes, we cannot, as you say, skip them for sure, but we have to, so this affected also are the Ira, Papa Joe, sorry, hi.
Hi again, stream 2. So all my colleagues from the breakout room now are back.
We are all here, I think. Breakout session number 1 was closed and now redirected. Are all the people ready? Devo andare a chiudere. The second room also was closed and stream 3 is already coming back. Simona, all the people have been moved, or because I can see some room and people still in the room.
Flavia, excuse me, also the third stream is coming back now.
Yes, so
Yes, but
Yeah.
when I left the room, it just kicked me out of the meeting.
Yeah,
So
Lucas,
maybe
we are here.
yes, but I joined again. I mean, I had to start the meeting again.
Oh, strange. I was directly
So maybe
moved
this happened
here.
also to the others.
Same with me.
Yeah.
I don't know. Strange because I didn't do anything.
I think for the others it's the same.
Okay,
So they have to join.
Let's see. Simona, do you think? Yeah, now we are already reaching people. I can see another one here. Okay. Dramatis.
Yeah, we couldn't enter. Me, no, neither Sina, neither Kari, I think.
No, Kari was there. Kari was with us. Costas was with us. Absolutely.
Okay, then it's okay.
So it's
we didn't see any stream, any room. Maybe we weren't assigned somewhere.
Yeah, you were assigned.
No, they weren't because they had some restrictions.
Some restriction, I don't know. Okay. We recorded everything and I don't know, all the others were there. Yeah, so okay. We are already running on time. I'm sorry on this rule that I have to keep the timing. I know it's awful, but I'm sorry. But I hope that I know that everyone are tired and wants to go So now to just report back. No, the synthesis part, each breakout group. The idea is that we'll briefly report back as a discussion Of course, the aim is not to repeat everything that was said. As I said, everything was recorded, so we can fully, but to highlight the key messaging and concrete recommendation, in my room, for example, but I'm sure all the others, very concrete suggestion, recommendation to make the framework better emerge. So we really thank to all of you for this contribution. So after each rapporteur present, I will open the floor for a couple of clarification and short reactions, so we can all understand the main takeaways, and then maybe just closing, telling you some future next step of the activities of our project, and so now I will stop and I will start with the breakout group. I will follow the 1, 2, 3. So for us, it would be my colleague Ciro Charimboli that took notes in the group. So just to recap what we said, and then leaving the floor to all the other groups. So just a few minutes, Ciro, just to highlight the main issues and just then clarifying everything. Okay.
Yes, just a second. So thank you again to everyone who took part to breakout session number 1, since there were a lot of suggestions and a lot of problematic issues involved, and it was very hard to take notes according to the numerous suggestions that went out during the breakout session. I will try to outline the most important thing, and most of the discussion was centered on the issue of skills mismatch, since it was brought to our attention that it is such a complex phenomenon which has a variety of implications, and so we probably should refine or at least take more in consideration the focus of the skill mismatch problem, acknowledging that not skill mismatch are equal in terms both of focus of the interventions and also in the policy making procedures. And there was also discussion about the importance of underlying the fluidity and the dynamics of the skill mismatch problem itself, in particular at the local level. So there is the importance of forecasting strategies, for example, to be more involved and to inform the policy making decision, in particular, again, at the local level. And in particular, talking about the target groups, which was also a main part of the discussion, we discussed about the micro level of target groups, since most of the participants in the breakout room suggested more granularity in the identification of target groups at micro level. And for example, just for one category of target group, which are needs, various typology of needs themselves can be identified. So maybe to highlight more the granularity of the target groups micro level. And there was also asked to us to clarify maybe more the distinction between active and passive labor market policies, since it can create confusion in the evaluation, and especially also due to the fact mainly that during this time, LMPs are always applied in combination with other measures that could be more passive in a certain sense, but they could also not be LMPs in a strict sense. So this complexity, I'm sorry, could be more highlighted in the framework. And there was also underlined the importance of the outreach activities in the sense of connect with target audiences and share informations, which is a very important procedures. And also, for example, to highlight the importance of micro-credential to have certification of competencies as a complementary activity to the policy design. And finally, also to reflect in the modality of how the A tool, in this case the ALMPO wizard, can effectively take all the various inputs and translate the granularity and the complexity of the various interventions especially in the terms of effectiveness in the tool itself. So these were a lot of inputs. These were a lot of suggestions. I tried to do my best to keep